want to fend for myself, and I want to build people up for them to fend for themselves. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Free Like Me podcast. Guests come on, speak their truth, leave their shame and pain behind, and walk out of this studio free like me. I found healing through transparency and opening up and breaking my silence, and that's what I urge all my guests to do. And the same thing happens for them. After every podcast, I get text messages and phone calls saying, man, do I feel good. So if you would like to join my guests and be free like me, reach out to me through my website, freelike-me.com, or find me on any social media site under Clark Fredericks. Send me a private message. We'll book a consultation call, get you in here. If you want my coaching program to free yourself as well, do the same thing through my website or social media. Set up a consultation call. My book, Scarred, is coming out July 29th. Get over to Barnes & Noble, get over to Amazon, any place else that sells books, and it is available for pre-order. And this week, man, am I excited. This guest has some story. And I read his book, Men in My Town, when I was in Aruba, and I was floored by it. So I can't wait for you to meet Keith Smith. My buddy Keith Smith, welcome to the show.
Clark, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome, man. You have a unique case in that in all my years of dealing with other victims of sexual abuse, you are the first one I've ever met who was stranger danger, a complete stranger to you. Even when I do my speeches, I am like, it's not the troll living under the bridge who's going to snatch your child. You know, it's somebody close who infiltrates your trust and is going to snatch your child. But there are cases that go the other way, and you have a case of a complete stranger abducting you.
Clark, I do, and I'm so glad you brought this up. The fact that stranger danger abductions are so rare is the reason I speak out, to educate the people that the risk to your child is not from the troll under the bridge, as you mentioned. The risk to your child is not the stranger. In 99+% of the cases, the risk to your child is what I refer to as familiar risk. Sometimes it's family. Other times it's people who are familiar to your family. Other times it's people on the block or coaches or doctors, teachers, bus drivers, anybody in the neighborhood who may be familiar with the child, right? So society has taught us to, as you mentioned, to be afraid of the stranger and to teach the kids about stranger danger. And I'm not about scaring kids. I'm about educating adults to where the real risk to a child exists. And that's in people who are closest to the child. Can I share a story?
Yeah, absolutely.
I speak publicly maybe 4, 5, 6 times a year. Corporate events, educational events, universities, colleges, military bases. A number of years ago, I spoke at Rutgers. Maybe 300, 400 people at Rutgers. Went through my educational speech about how to keep kids safe and where the real risks are. What are the myths? And I talked about this very point, where the risk to your child is most likely from someone known to you or your child and not from the stranger. At the end of the talk, and you've been through this, at the end of the talk, people from, I don't want to call them the audience, but the people who heard, someone will come and talk to you. And I was surrounded by 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people. And they were asking questions and they were genuinely concerned about the message. And I saw out of the corner of my eye a guy coming toward the group, and he stopped. I looked at him, and he stopped. And when I turned away to address the people that were around me, he came forward again. So I'm a little apprehensive about, I turn, I look, he stops. I need to confront danger face to face, not turn my back to it. I didn't know whether he was a danger, but he was coming and would stop. He was coming and he would stop. So I excused myself from the group. I approached the guy. I was about this far away from him. And I said, "Can I help?" And he put his head down and he started to sob uncontrollably, shoulders shaking. Because during my talk, what I said was, the risk might not be from the stranger at the park. It might very well be from the person you allow to take your child to the park. This guy is inconsolable. And he's looking up, and through tears, he said to me that when I said that, I spoke directly to him. And he went on to say how his dad had passed. He was 7, 8, 9 years old. A guy from the church got friendly with his mom, said he wanted to be an adult figure in the boy's life. And every Sunday when they went to Mass, the boy would go with that guy in a van to the park. And that man said to me, every Sunday for a couple of years, he took me to the park. And we never got out of the van. The risk to our children is from people around us, people known to us, people in the community. I hold myself out as the face. This is the face of a stranger danger, abduction, beating, and rape. And I got street cred when I tell you that's not what you need to be afraid of. It happens. It's extremely rare. It happened to me. We need to be aware of the risk, the familiar risk, and take steps to protect those we love and those who are around us.
Really, the other big case of stranger danger, like happened in New York, and I'm trying to, I can't remember the kid's name, but it was a big case. He was like 6 years old and talked his parents into letting him walk to either the bus stop or school on his own.
Evan Petz.
Yeah, that's it.
P-A-T-Z.
And again, stranger picked him off the street. But like you say, it's 99%, someone we know.
Clark, I don't remember all the details of the child Pate's case, but I'm pretty sure it was a custodian in a building that he lived in. So originally it was thought
they had a couple different people over the years. Yeah.
Never recovered the boy, but they thought it was a stranger danger abduction, and there's no proof to that.
Right.
And based on the odds, I would say it was someone known to that child or someone in the neighborhood.
So before we get into your story,
Sure.
which I read your book in Aruba, and we had met briefly, and I never knew your story. And we'd follow me on social media, and you would comment on posts here and there, but I never knew your story until you sent me your book. And in Aruba, I read your book, and I couldn't believe your story, man. And at one point in the book, I exclaimed out yet loud, "Oh, hell yeah!" And we'll get into that part of the book. But man, your story is crazy. But you also worked as an advocate for overturning the New Jersey Statute of Limitations law. And that's where we met at one of the hearings. So just tell the audience how you got involved as an advocate and
Sure.
where we met and the circumstances.
I don't consider myself to be an advocate. What I consider myself to be is literally an educator. First of all, thank you for reading the book in Aruba. I can now say my book is going international.
There you go.
And it seems like it got a good review.
Oh, that's great.
So there's a handful of people, probably 100, of which you and I are a group, nationwide, probably 100 people, who are taking steps to overturn, I'd rather use a better word, they're taking steps to extend the statute of limitations that victims of sexual abuse have in civil court, in courts all across the country. Why? If you're the victim, I'll rephrase it, victims of sex crimes, if you get the strength to finally confront the perpetrator and you walk into a police station. This is what typically happens. And you say, I was raped 7 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. The cops, in the best case, they'll turn you to a detective. The detective will take your story. The detective will reach out to a prosecutor. The prosecutor will say, best case scenario, we all believe you. But since the time lapse, there's no proof. There's very little evidence still around. And there's not enough evidence for the prosecutor to take it to a grand jury, to get an indictment, to go to court to get a conviction. So in most cases, the authorities, it's not that they don't believe us. It's that because of the lapse between the assault, the rape, the abuse, and the disclosure of it, limits law enforcement's ability to act on a criminal case. You could always go to civil court. But civil court, the flaw in the civil court rulings, I'm not an attorney, but the flaw in the civil court rulings were in some states, you had something like 5 years after you reached the age of majority. So if you were a victim of child sexual abuse from the ages of 8 to 12, as soon as you turned 18, or maybe 21 in some states, the clock started. If you don't go to the police by the age of 23, 18 plus 5, or if it's 21 in some states and you don't go to the police by the age of 26, the statute of limitations has run and you can't bring charges. So a handful of us, and thank you for being one of them, have worked across the country. I think it's more than 20 states now have adopted statute of legislation that allows victims of sex crimes to take a perpetrator to court, civil court, in some cases up until the age of 55.
That's what we got passed in New Jersey. Yeah.
So we passed it in New Jersey, we passed it in Rhode Island, we passed it in New York. And it turns out most victims of sexual abuse will go public with their story in their 40s. Well, if it's child sexual abuse under the age of 18, that statute, the old statute of limitations, negates your privileges to do so. The new statute of limitations allows you to do so. And it's a great move forward for victims of sexual abuse, assault, and rape. So here's how you and I met. I testified, it's probably now 12 years ago, in the Senate chamber in New Jersey, in Trenton, testifying with 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people to the Senate as to why the statute of limitations needed to be extended. It took 10 years. The Senate passed it, then it goes to the House. But then the legislative session ends. New legislators come in, you got to do it all over again. From the first hearings 12 years, 13 years ago, up until just a couple of years ago, we had to reintroduce this bill in the Senate and the House and then get it signed by a governor. When it was signed, a number of us who had participated over the decade were invited to the Capitol in Trenton to witness the signing. I pull into the garage that's attached to the Capitol building in Trenton. I get out of my car, I'm walking over to the elevator banks, and I see this guy walking through the parking lot. And I can't explain this. I can't. I knew he was like me. I knew where he was going. Never saw the guy before. It's a parking lot at the State House in Trenton. He could have been a judge. He could have been a detective. Could have been a cop. Could have been a bail. Could have been anybody. We both get in the elevator. We both go up to the same floor. He gets off. We walk down the hall. He walks into the same chamber room that I walk into, and it's Clark Fredericks. And that's how we met.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I again, I have no idea. I have no explanation as to how I knew you were there for the same reason I was there. But God bless you for being there.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
the law got changed in New Jersey because Clark and dozens of other people worked for a decade plus to get that law changed to protect the rights of victims of sex crimes, men, women, adults, children, to go into civil court and hold the perpetrators of the sex crimes accountable for their acts. So thank you, Clark.
Amen. Yeah, last time I looked, I mean, I haven't looked in a while. It's been a couple of years, but like there was like, you mentioned 20. It was like 30 out of X amount of states that there are. 32 or something had updated their
Fantastic.
their laws. So I maybe the others by now. Maybe there's just a handful left. I don't know. It's not something I back in the day when we were working on it, I was up on it, and then I haven't checked recently in a couple of years. So bravo to you too for for testifying and working on that. And let's now let's get into your story and
Sure.
take me into, and the audience into, where this was, the time frame we're talking, what age you were, etc.
So it's 1974. It's in a beautiful old bucolic town called Lincoln, Rhode Island.
Lincoln. How far is that, near Providence, or?
It's just a couple of miles north of Providence.
Okay.
And a couple of miles south of the Massachusetts border. And that's why my accent sounds like this.
And people nowadays can't understand what the 70s and 80s were like.
Yeah.
There was freedom, and you were doing something which was common back then when you got abducted. But I'll let you go into that. But it was the norm for the times.
Yeah, and I really want to explain what the town is like.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because the book's called Men in My Town, but because people have this perception that it's the stranger in the city, right? My high school graduating class, 300 kids. So anybody who's listening, if you graduated from a school with 1,000 kids graduating your senior class, that's a big, big town. There's 22,000 people in my hometown. 22,000, it's a small town. There's a river called the Blackstone River that runs through Rhode Island out into Narragansett Bay. The Blackstone River was used in the 1700s and the 1800s to power textile mills. They would build the mills right on the side of the river, use the flowing water to literally generate power. The reason I share that is because the town was built in the 1700s, the 1800s. There are still buildings, stone buildings, mills. It's a beautiful old, now it's, 300-year-old town. There are farms, grain silos, waterfalls. My downtown street, all 4 blocks of it, had a butcher shop, a barber shop, one bank, and it was a local bank. It wasn't a national bank. Had 3 bars. And one of those reasons is because those mills would work 24 hours a day, right? So somebody on that midnight to 8 shift would get off and hit the corner and have a couple of beers, right? So an ice cream parlor, and not a national chain. It was this beautiful little small 4-block area in a town of 20,000 people or 22,000 people, in a town that's been around for 300 years with waterfalls and farm. Oh, there's a place called Lincoln Woods. It's Rhode Island's Central Park. It's a beautiful place with a lake in the middle of it, right? Okay, so that's the town. Not the place you think kids are grabbed like New York City. I was 14 years old. I was a hockey player. It was March 1st, 1974. And I'm at my coach's barbershop. Not the same one I talked to, but Mr. Richards' barbershop. And I'm there with my entire teammates, and we're talking about last weekend's game, what we did right, what we did wrong, and what they want to see us do this coming weekend. And Clark, you mentioned that in the 70s, we did things that people can't relate to today. And one of those things we did, and this is the reason I described the town and where I was, I hitchhiked home. Because hitchhiking in the mid-70s in a small town, I would get picked up by my next-door neighbor or somebody who knew my dad. Or if I was in the car with my dad would pick up one of my friends who was hitchhiking home. Hitchhiking was acceptable and normal. Don't do it today. I get in this guy's car and tell him where I want to go. There's a small place in Rhode Island, in my hometown, called Hartley's Pork Pies. It's a small little store that just bakes pies, pork pies, not desserts. I tell him, everybody knows where it is. I tell him, drop me off at Hartley's. It goes right by it. Not a problem. I tell him, it's about 100 yards away, there's a fire department. I tell him, drop me off at the fire station. Right by it. My antenna go up. I'm 14. I won't go into the details. My oldest brother lived in Washington, D.C. and worked for the federal government. I'm going down the Smithfield Avenue, no relation to Keith Smith. I'm going down Smithfield Avenue, and we get to an intersection, 90-degree intersection, and there's a bar on the corner on my side of the car called Kernan's Lounge, and the Kernans were friends of my family, and I knew if I could get out of this guy's car right there, I'd be safe. I'd just roll into the parking lot, run into Kernan's, and I'd be okay. He's not saying a word. He bypassed two places where everybody knows, Hartley's and the fire department. He puts his blinker on, literally I can remember this, puts his blinker on to take a sharp 90-degree right-hand turn. Perfect. Car has to slow down. I grab the handle on the door on the passenger side. I yank the handle. I roll against the door with the intention of rolling into the parking lot. The door doesn't open, and the left side of my head explodes, and my head smashes against the window in the passenger's door. And at that moment, I know I'm in trouble. I'm really, really in trouble. And up until that point, and then confirmed by that action, a sexual assault was nowhere on my mind. Nancy Grace hadn't yet made it to cable.
Right. So your head exploded from him punching you?
He smashes me on the left side.
When you tried to open that door.
Yeah, and the door didn't open, right? So he hits me and my head goes boom against, so I got smashed on the left side of my head. Well, I got punched with his left hand and I hit my right side of the head against the window. And I'm thinking, it's confirmed. I'm being taken somewhere.
I'm in deep shit right now.
Actually, I am. I am deep shit.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I'm being taken somewhere to be told to deliver a message to my brother who works for the feds.
That's what you're thinking immediately. Oh, still not going to the other place. Wow.
I hadn't had my first kiss yet. So why would I think that?
Right.
And again, Nancy Grace hasn't been on cable to scare everybody. So the only reason they picked me up was intentional. They're not letting me out of the car. They're going to take me somewhere. They're going to talk to me. They're not going to give me a whoop-ass beating, but they're going to talk to me. Call your brother, tell your brother. Now, what they didn't know, or nobody knew, was my brother who lived in Washington, D.C. and worked for the feds, was home at my parents' house that night. It's not in the book, by the way, because the truth sounds like bullshit. Okay. So I know I'm in trouble. I can't get out. And then I start saying, I'm 14 years old. I weigh 107 pounds. I mentioned I played hockey. I was a defenseman in a league between 14 and 18-year-old kids. When you're 14 and weighing 107 pounds, playing against 18-year-old kids can be men with 200-pound bodies. So I was used to being banged around a bit, especially as a defenseman and hockey player. So he's driving, and I'm like, this is all within me. I've got to do everything I can to be aware. And I remember saying to this guy, if I don't get home soon, people will be looking for me. That wasn't a lie. I knew it in my heart. If I wasn't home soon, people would be on the street.
Is he saying anything to
Not a
you
word.
during this drive?
Nothing. Creepily, I can remember him whistling.
Oh. That's like ominous.
You know, these thoughts are not in my head all the time, but they flood like burst of lightning, and that just happened. Okay, so he won't let me out of the car. I can't get out of the car. We go up a road called Cobble Hill. Remember, I live in this, literally, it's a bucolic old town. We go up this hill. At the top of the hill is a road called Lewis Quisett Pike. Doesn't matter what the name of the street is, but there's a Rhode Island State Police barracks at the top of the hill. If he takes a left, he's going into Providence. If he takes a right, he's going past the police station. 14 years old. I'm like, take a right, take a right, take a right. He takes the right. I'm like, perfect. I start looking in the passenger side door mirror to see if cars are coming up behind us. And literally, I'm praying that a cop car is coming up to pull into the barracks. Or a cop car comes pulling out of the barracks and gets in front of us. Because if I've got one behind me or in front of me, I'm going to yank on his wheel on his car and I'm going to crash his car. Because at this point, I realize I'm in trouble. I'm in risk. And I don't know what that risk is. I just know I'm terrified and I'm in danger. Not a car in sight. Not a cop. Forget about a cop. No car. Nobody behind me. Nobody in front of me. I mentioned Lincoln Woods earlier. Just past the police station is Lincoln Woods. And like most parks, state parks, national, you can't go in there after sunset. Now it's about 7 o'clock at night on March 1st, 74. It's a Friday. It's dark. If he pulls into Lincoln Woods, this is the first time I'm considering it. If he pulls into Lincoln Woods, he's going to kill me, not rape me. Because being killed crossed my mind before anything, before sex assault. So between the police barracks and the first entrance to Lincoln Woods, I'm like, I could die in Lincoln Woods. He doesn't pull into Lincoln Woods. I'm like, whoa. He goes down Breckneck Hill. He takes a left. Just goes up this really rural road and then takes a left into the woods. A gravel path into the woods. My door's locked. I can't get out. He walks around the car. I'm not going into details, so if you're a victim of a sex crime, assault, or rape, I can tell you now I'm not going to trigger you if I haven't already. But he goes out of the car, opens up the door, puts a belt around my neck and drags me out of the car and rapes me in the woods. That's the end of that story.
Wow, dude. I mean, he wraps a belt around your neck, drags you out of the car, and has he still, like, as he's dragging you into the woods to do what he's going to do, is he still not said a word to you?
If he did, I don't remember.
Yeah.
You know, because the thoughts going through my head at that point are, I have no idea what's happening, but I got to stay alive. He might have sang a song, for all I know. He might have recited poetry. I have no idea. I don't know if he said a word. In my mind, nothing was more important than just being aware and thinking about, how do I live through this? Because I know I am really, really in trouble.
You know, if you look up horror in the dictionary, that right there would be the pick, you know, putting a belt around a 14-year-old neck and dragging him into the woods and abusing him.
And it wasn't as easy as I sat there and he put a belt around my neck. He opens the door from the outside. And now I realize he's on this side of the car. But that door is open because he got out of it. So I start to like lean over to the driver's side with the intent of crawling out of his car. He grabs me by the leg, pulls me back, reaches down. I had a I can't remember the name of these parkers. They were blue. They had a hood. They had fur around the top. Anyways, he reaches over. So he's pulling me back because I'm trying to, get out. I'm not just going to sit there. The door's open. I'm gone. I try to get out. He pulls me back, pulls me up, and I didn't know what it was. I can feel my shoulders come back, and then there's something around my neck, and that's, yeah. I just don't want people to think I passively sat there while he wrapped a belt around my neck and dragged me out of the car.
Right. After this attack, does he leave you in the woods? Does he bring you back to the car? What do we do next?
So much of what I'm about to say next will not make any sense to people unless you've been through some kind of horrific trauma. I don't think you think rationally. I think you think about staying alive. That's it. So I'm not going to go into the details of the rape. But I get back in his car. I don't know. At that point, because he didn't kill me, did I feel safer? Right? I was trying to escape to prevent being killed because that's what I thought was going to happen. He didn't kill me. He raped me. I get back in his car. He backs out of this gravel road. It's funny, like I never thought about how did he get out. Well, I know now. I remember. It's coming to me. He backed out. It's gravel. We'll come back to this gravel road later. He backs out. And again, I don't know if he said a word because my mind is where it is. And he drives all the way down to where I originally told him. He goes to where Hotley's Pork Pies almost is. And there's a road called Higginson Avenue, Smithfield Avenue and Higginson Avenue. Hotley's Pork Pies is just past that. And this guy takes a left onto Higginson Avenue and pulls up in front of a place called Cody's Meat Market. And he stops his car. It's close enough to Hotley's. He gets out, driver's side, and walks, down to the headlight, walks across the front of the car, comes over to my side, and unlocks the door. The door had been rigged. Respectfully, you and I are old enough to remember when door locks had knobs on them. So where the frame of the door and the window comes up, the knob was there. And even as kids, I used to do this. My dad's 1975 Ford LTD Country Esquire wagon would unscrew the cap on the lock, and it was just a screw. And you had the cap in your hand. Well, that's what he had done. So he had unscrewed the cap on the lock on the passenger side of his AMC Gremlin, ugliest car ever made in America. And when he opened the door to let me in when I was hitchhiking, apparently he had pushed that screw, not the knob, down through the door jamb. So when the door was closed, there was no way to unlock it because the knob had been removed. Okay. So he unlocks the door, and I'm not getting out because he's on the other side of the door. The door's unlocked. He walks from the door to the passenger headlight in front of the car, and then he comes down the driver's side. And now he's as far away from me as he can be. Before he gets to the driver's door and he's at the headlight, he's as far away from me as he can be. I get out. I'm looking at him across the roof of the car. He gets in. He closes the door. Now, I'm not safe yet, but I'm out of his car. And we've all seen these things. You pull up in a supermarket parking or any parking lot, and there's a long cement piece, maybe, 3 feet long, just a cement block, right? You pull up, and that's where you park. I look down and I see that there's that thing is crumbling. It's broken in pieces. So I pick up a piece of that cement block and I throw it against the back window of his AMC Gremlin. Now, the AMC Gremlin has a back window that's like this big. It's a really ugly car. Google it, you'll see it. The whole back was on a slant. Anyways, I threw it literally as I'm running, and I throw it and I hear it shatter. I don't know if it goes through, but I definitely cracked that window. I go across the Higginson Avenue. I run down the street to a bowling alley. There's probably 100 people in there bowling. Do I go in there for help? Nope. Might not make sense to any of you. And in hindsight, if I was thinking rationally, yeah, that was probably the safest place to be. But all I needed to do was get home. I wanted to get home. I run up this hill. It's March 1st. This is a sand hill that my friends and I used to ride our bikes down. I know this. I know exactly where I am. I make it a couple of blocks and a car is coming down the street. And my 14-year-old mind, that car is him coming back to kill me because I broke his window. So I literally crawl under a Ford Galaxy. It's a car. And I hide underneath this car. And that car that was coming drives right by me. And I'm laying in a fetal position on my side, my knees up, my elbows, and I'm looking underneath that car. And the lights go straight by. I don't know if it's his car or not, but it didn't stop. It's not his car. I don't know, but it definitely wasn't his car, right? Most likely. But I think it is. And now I think he's going to kill me. I get out. I cross 2 more streets. My parents' house is 4 blocks from where I got out of his car. There's a beautiful set of hedges on my neighbor's lawn. You know, lawn hedges. They're probably 40, 50 feet deep. They were 3 feet, 4 feet high. Another car's coming. I'm convinced it's him circling the block because he knows the direction I ran. I literally burrow in the dirt at the bottom of these hedges to hide. Like a dog digging in the dirt. And I told you I was underneath the car. When that car went, I needed to get out from underneath the car. I almost couldn't. I don't know how easy I got in, but getting back out wasn't easy. My jacket got stuck on the underside of the car. I'm up on my head. So now when I run the second time, I'm not going to limit myself because I was stuck. If it was him, I was stuck under that car. So now I bury, literally I'm in those hedges, like trying to just hide in the dirt under the hedges. And that other car went that way, went in front of me. The other car came past me in this direction. And I get up, I cross the street, I go past one house, and the next house is my parents' house. I open the door. The house was set up. There's a door, a couple of steps, a kitchen door into the kitchen. The kitchen door is always open because it takes you downstairs to the basement. I open up the front door. I go up the 4 steps. I collapse. Kitchen door is open. If you look straight through the kitchen door, there's the phone on the wall. And my oldest brother, guy who was in D.C., worked for the feds, is on the phone in my parents' house, talking to his fiancée at the time. I didn't have to say a thing. Instinctively, he knew something was horribly wrong. I'm collapsed. I'm laying across the steps. There's only 4 steps and a landing, and then the door, and you're in the kitchen. So my brother comes out, literally scoops me up, doesn't say a word, just scoops me up off the floor and does a fireman carry, puts me over his shoulder. He's not a fireman. Puts me over his shoulder, and he yells out for my dad, "Dad, come here." My dad leaves the den into the kitchen. That's how the house is set up. I don't remember seeing my dad come out. But I remember my brother holding me, like over his shoulder, walking down those stairs, and my father's behind him. We get in my dad's car, we go straight to the police station.
They just took you immediately to the police.
Yeah. And I can honestly say I'm not sure if they knew at that time what happened to me. They just knew something really, really bad happened.
Are you blubbering anything?
I'm sure. Yeah, I was hysterical.
Yeah.
I can't recall what I told them, but I will start telling you what I told the cops. The police station is, 4 miles from my parents' house, so I'm there immediately. My dad, I'm comfortable saying my dad knew every cop for good reasons. The chief of detectives, I went to school with his kids. One of the cops on duty was one of my uncle's best men at his wedding. So again, small town. We go in, it's about 8 o'clock at night on a Friday. Whoever's working the desk, my dad and my brother said something, and within seconds, it feels like maybe it was a couple of minutes, I'm downstairs in a windowless basement room in the Lincoln, Rhode Island police station. I felt really protected because I got home and my dad and my brother were there with me. Get to the police station, I'm protected. I got my crew, right? They take me into that windowless basement room in the police station. They won't let my dad and brother in. I'm behind a closed door with a guy I've never seen before. And I'm feeling vulnerable.
You know, I had the prosecutor in my case on the podcast, and he was talking about exactly what you're describing. And he described like how back in the day you would go to a police station and it would be a windowless room and you'd be interrogated about what happened.
Oh my God.
And then how now, you know, you go, you know, like they take you to, in my town called Jenny's house, you know, it's
Yeah.
for abused children, and it's a safe house and a safe room, and you know, the way it's painted and toys and yada yada yada, versus this sterile cold environment they put you in.
What did you say? It was Jenny's house?
Ginny's.
Ginny's.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Keith Smith ended up at Buddy's house because that was my dad's street name, Buddy. Albert Buddy Smith. And you know what? That was a safe place. And they took care of you there. Anyway, so I'm in the police station in this windowless room, and you and I haven't had that conversation about that similarity, you know,
Yeah, no.
what the cops said in the past. I'm in the room and I'm all by myself, and I'm vulnerable again. I don't know who this guy is. And he starts. The run home that I explained earlier, under the car in the hedges, is one of the most vivid, hurtful memories that I have. The second one is about what I'm going to tell you right now. So, Clark, you and I are probably 4 feet from each other. I was across a smaller desk with this cop, detective. And he starts with, "What can you tell me?" So I tell him, I won't go into the whole detail, but I tell him everything I told you guys earlier.
Mhm.
And I said to him, he's left-handed. And the detective, he didn't laugh. I laugh. I didn't laugh when I told him. I said, he's left-handed. And he goes, "How do you know that?" I said, "Because when he punched me in the left side of my head, he hit me with his left hand." He's driving. Remember, I tried to get out of the car. He literally squares off, shoulders to my face, and smashes me. So I know he's left-handed. It's like, wow, okay. What was he wearing? So I described the suit jacket, the shirt, the color of the pants. I tell him he's driving an AMC Gremlin. Even at 14, I was a car guy. At the age of 15, I started pumping gas. So I knew it was an AMC Gremlin. I said, it's purple with a white stripe down the side with white vinyl seats. And I scratched as much as I could on the passenger side of the seat to leave a mark. Because you remember, at some point, I know something bad's going to happen. And then I said to him, his light, this is real. In the book, I changed the numbers a little bit. I just inverted them. I'm going to tell you the real license plate number. 1974, in Rhode Island, there was an AMC Gremlin with a license plate number PY879. I said PY789 in the book. PY879. I tell the detective that. He goes, "How do you know?" Well, I'm in the passenger seat of this guy's car. And in Rhode Island, now I know in Jersey, it's in New York, it's on the inspection sticker is in the windshield lower left-hand corner. In Rhode Island, it's on the lower right-hand corner. So I'm sitting in the car, 1974, looking at the inspection sticker. Computers weren't around in 1974, so when you get your car inspected, they wrote your license plate number on the back of the inspection sticker in a magic marker. So I'm sitting in the car before being in the woods, looking at this thing going, PY879, PY879. I must have said it hundreds of times. So I told the cop, his license plate is PY879. I described him, the car, the route, the license plate number. And that's when this begins. You know this guy? No. You ever seen him before? No. You know this guy. I know you know this guy. I know you've seen him before. I haven't. I don't know him. And now I'm no longer traumatized and scared. I'm going to become belligerent because he's calling me a liar. And I realize my dad and my brother are here on the other side of that door. They can't help. It's all on me. And he says, "It's okay, Keith." Now he becomes soft. "It's okay, Keith. You can tell me that you know him. Just tell me that you know him." And I take the full 180. I don't know him. I've never seen him before. I don't know who he is. I don't know him. Cop comes, uniform comes in. This is minutes go by. It's going back and forth, and I'm pissed because he doesn't believe me. Like, what happens now if he doesn't believe me? A couple of minutes later, a uniform comes in. Literally, back then they had dot matrix printers. I don't know if you put paper in a printer and it used to roll around. I could hear it printing. The uniform comes in, drops a piece of paper in front, talks to the detective a little bit. The detective looks at it. And he looks up at me with a smile, not a smirk. He says, "Keith, you've done good." Because he ran PY 879. And the guy had been arrested at least that I'm aware of. I don't know what was on that record. But they ran his license plate number and he came back that he'd been arrested that I'm aware of because I'm aware that he was arrested 3 times before he was going to be arrested in a couple of days for interstate distribution of pornography. Back then it was called unnatural sex acts. He was arrested for that twice. So now they got his car, they got evidence, they got, a victim. That was a traumatic experience for me, being questioned by that cop who I thought didn't believe me. And now I need to tell everybody the cop wasn't being difficult. He was doing his job. And I respect him for doing what he did, the way he did it, and why he had to do it. I don't know if it's a week, a month, days go by. Oh, yeah, days go by. A couple of days, I don't know. I get a call, my classroom door. Somebody knocks, they open up the door, the teacher goes out, it's Mrs. Betancourt. She goes out, she comes back in, she goes, "Keith?" She goes, "You got to go to the principal's office." I go, "What do I do now?" There's a couple of cops in there and a couple of suits. "We need to take you to the police station." I said, "I'm not going anywhere without my dad." My dad shows up. We go to the police station. They put me in a room. It's me and my dad. A detective who I know. I went to school with his kids. 2 other suits. Me, my dad, the detective, 2 suits. I don't know the suits. They hand me mugshots. Well, they hand me pictures. The detective, known to me and my family, says, "Keith, just go through these and see if you can see the guy that did this to you." The best way to describe it, Clark, is if I handed you a deck of playing cards, and somebody said, "Do me a favor, pull out the 5 of clubs." There's only one in the deck, right? So I don't know, maybe there were 6 or 10 pictures. There weren't 2, there weren't 20. And I went like this. That's him. It was that clear. Suit number 1. It was like the detective, the first detective. "Have you ever seen these pictures before?" Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, nope. My dad went into the Navy, the U.S. Navy, but he's like 16, 17 years old, and he's stoic. At that moment, he's stoic. He's not smiling. He's not angry. I'm looking at him for like, give me some clue. Who am I being interrogated by here? Nobody says anything. Turns out that me, my dad, the detective, I knew. Suit number 1 was the prosecutor. Suit number 2 was the defense attorney. So I picked this guy out of a photo lineup. Months later, I get a phone call. And I get called to the grand jury. I don't know what a grand jury is, but this is the 3rd event. I walk into that courthouse with a crew. I got my dad, a couple of my dad's friends. I got uniform cops. I got detectives. I got a prosecutor. I had a crew. Never felt safer in my life. There's 5 or 6 people there with me. I go in. It's a stately old courthouse in downtown Providence. Imagine that, like the places in Trenton, right? These places that were built 150 years ago. They take me up to a room. They open up these beautiful doors. The detective and the prosecutor are on, I could see it. They're on both sides of the door, and they kind of like point me in. I walk in. The doors close. There's nobody behind me. The crew that walked me in, they're not allowed in that grand jury room. I'm in that room by myself. There's 24 people on the grand jury. I don't know the exact number, but it wasn't 10, it wasn't 30, it was 24 roughly. And somebody says to me, I don't know what his role is, probably a prosecutor. Somebody said to me, just tell us your story. I was going to say I'm scared, but I don't know if that's the right word. But I realize I'm vulnerable because I'm by myself again. I was by myself under that car. I was by myself in those hedges. I was by myself in that windowless room with the detective. And now I'm in court, and I know the solemnity of what's about to happen. He's either going to get indicted or not. And whatever the motions were that I had, it was like I was abandoned. I'm by myself again. They're all just out of reach. The people who can keep me safe, the people who can prosecute, they're all out of reach on the other side of that door. Whatever happens on the inside of this door, it's up to me. And I remember that, getting that feeling. I said, he's not going to get away with this.
Did you ever have any conversation with your father about not testifying?
No.
Did you ever have any thoughts, I can't do this, this is too much? No.
I told you when I first got home, my brother picked me up. Boom. Less than 10 minutes later, we're in the police station. When I was in that guy's car, after the rape, I was saying to myself, if he doesn't kill me, he's not getting away with this. And I said that because
Awesome.
I'm trying to convince myself, right, that if I live, he's not getting away with it. I know I kind of backtracked on the story, but now I'm in that grand jury room. Oh, I'm sorry. To answer your question directly, I knew if my dad didn't take me to the police station, I would have walked there myself because nobody was going to do that to me. Right? Now, I know a lot of people, when they disclose, they don't get help. And my heart aches for them. I didn't have to disclose. I ended up in the police station immediately. Right? But had I been asked what happened and told them what happened and they weren't going to help me, I would have walked or rode my bike to the police station to report that guy. And those were convictions I made before we ended up going. So there was never any doubt. My dad never said, do you want to do this? Are you sure you want to do this? Maybe you shouldn't do it. So I testified, and when I came out of that room, I was a wreck. I was strong. I was apprehensive at the beginning because I was by myself. I got very, very strong and to tell my story. And I remember seeing women. I'm 14, so everybody's an older woman. But I remember seeing older women in that jury box, in that grand jury room, crying right in front of me. And it bothered me that my story was so upsetting. My truth was so upsetting that total strangers were crying. I walk out of that room, the door's open, and there's my crew, right? And I'm like safe again, but I'm blubber, just blubber. I was emotionally, physically done because I knew whatever happened in that room was all or nothing, pass or fail, indicted or not. And then months later, doesn't matter why it took months later, the guy that attacked me was beaten to death in the streets of Providence, Rhode Island. And the newspaper had his name and his age. He was 31. He was 29 when he grabbed me. It said his name, 31, beaten to death in Providence.
That's when
That's the Aruba.
That's when I was in a room and I yelled out, "Oh hell yeah!" I mean, the book goes into a lot more detail on what led up to the circumstances and why it was taking longer for him to get prosecuted. But whoever and however many in your town took care of this guy.
Yeah. Again, the book is called Men in My Town, because I'm pretty confident it's men.
Yeah.
It wasn't a man. And he was literally beaten to death in the street and left in the street to be found.
Yep.
And to this day, he grabbed me on March 1st, 1974. Today's March 31st, 2025. No one has ever been indicted and charged with his murder. That's the story.
Now, the politically correct thing is to say, "Oh, we're not supposed to take the law into our own hands." But F that, This was absolutely horrific what happened to you. This was a repeat offender. My guy got out from under a minimum of 3 criminal cases as well. You mentioned 3 cases with this guy. It's not like there was any question on what this guy was about. He had these prior charges, and what he did, and you smashed his window. You left
Evidence.
clues. Yeah,
Scratches on the seat.
yeah.
When they impounded his car. They impound his car. They go to the driver's seat. They impounded his car. Fact. I'm guessing they went to his driver's seat, looked at the side, it's all scratched to shit.
Yeah.
There's a window broken.
Got the window broken.
Oh.
The license plate number.
Yeah. Before I got out of his car, he put a $10 bill in my lap.
This is after the rape?
$10 bill.
Is that supposed to buy your silence?
I have no idea.
Oh, man.
I do have an idea why he did what he did. I'll come back to that in a minute. I don't know why he gave me a $10 bill. But not only did I have scratches on the seat and his license plate and the description of his clothes, the color of his car, the length of his sideburns. See all of this? And then the smashed window, whether it went through or not, I definitely cracked it. I said, here's a $10 bill that he gave me. So I don't know why he gave me that 10, but I made that comment seconds ago that I know why he did what he did. You know why he did it? Because he wanted to. You know what drives criminal behavior? Because criminals want to do it. You know what drives criminal sexual behavior? Because the criminal wants to commit a sex crime. That's what drives it. I don't know his motive to give me the $10 bill. I know his motive for why he was driving through the streets of Lincoln, Rhode Island, looking for somebody. It's because he wants to.
I mean, from start to finish, that's an incredible story. That's about as horrific as you can get. And then the outcome is, to me, poetic justice,
Clark, I've been asked a couple of times, do I think what happened to him was justified? Is this a case of vigilante justice? Should anybody, be able to do that and get away with it? And I thought about this long and hard for 4 decades. I'm only speaking for myself here. I'm glad that he's no longer alive. Because we both mentioned that our abusers had been arrested 3 times before. In order to get arrested, a lot of evidence has to be in place. There's a chance that your guy and my guy abused dozens, if not hundreds of kids before one of them had the courage to stand up and take a stand. Well, to stand up and say so. And then there's got to be enough evidence to drop a charge. And then when you have a charge, there's going to be enough evidence for a prosecutor to think they can get a conviction. My guy had been convicted 3 times before me. So how many people did he do this to before? And the reason I say that I'm okay with him being beaten to death. I caught a beating. I got beat that night. In my bones, I sincerely believe, because nobody's ever been charged with his murder, that he got whacked because of what he did to me. So I had to cross his path to put an end to what he was doing. Because at some point, he might have grabbed a kid in my neighborhood or any neighborhood and killed them.
Absolutely. I think you narrowly escaped death. Why he would think of letting you go and think he could get away with it, he had to know he screwed up by doing that.
So your abuser was known to you, known in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And, in our circles, we refer to that as a familiar victim, not necessarily family, but family or someone familiar. And mine is 100% stranger. I never saw this guy before. Stranger danger abduction. There's a law enforcement will tell you that in a stranger danger abduction, I'm not talking about parental custody grabs, where a parent grabs a child and this, but a true strange. When I say grab, I mean a parent for custody reasons takes a child. I'm not talking about parents abusing a kid. But if a child is abducted, truly abducted, by a stranger for a sex crime, and the abduction lasts 3 hours or more, there's a 50-50 chance the child's dead.
Wow. Because
the perp doesn't want to get caught.
Right.
Mine was just under 3 hours.
Wow.
Now, I didn't know, I knew how long it was, but I didn't know that stat. Right? That's why law enforcement does everything they can on a missing child immediately, because the clock is running against them. So I think that, again, he had been arrested a number of times.
You mentioned, the difficulty of prosecuting this, especially after years gone by. And when I had the prosecutor in my case on the show, I said, why does it seem that someone arrested for drugs gets a higher conviction than a pedophile does for abuse? And he's like, I know that seems like it happens sometimes, and in truth it does. And the reason is because we have a higher likelihood of prosecuting for the drug conviction versus just, he goes, I hate to even say it, a traumatized 4-year-old or a traumatized 5-year-old, and we have zero evidence, and we're just going off the words of that child, and we have no evidence left, and it's been years or decades. And he's like, it's just, so if we can get some sort of plea deal, we take it, just because we don't want the person to walk. And so he goes, yeah, that's the reason why.
Clark, after I went public, I know for a fact, I kept track. I've spoken to more than 100 victims of abuse, assault, or rape. 100. I stopped at 100. I stopped keeping track. And to your point about prosecution, there are so many kids who are pressured not to tell. Not by the perp, but by family or by support networks, right? So many kids are not believed. I don't believe you. Don't ever say that again. Uncle Bobby would never do that. If you tell anybody, it'll destroy the family. So there's all this pressure. And then you put the 10-year-old kid in that detective's room. Do you know the guy? Yeah, he's my uncle. You ever been with him before? Yeah. Has he ever touched you before? Yeah. Oh, so many of these people that I know who went public after repeated abuse are shut down. Then there are people who, after repeated abuse, who want to disclose, won't disclose because they feel complicit in their abuse. First time I didn't know what was happening. The second time I felt uncomfortable. The third time I was afraid if I told anybody, they would say, well, why'd you let it happen? Right? So there's so much pressure on the victims of familiar sex crimes or sex crimes committed by someone known to them. In my case, I didn't have any of that pressure. Right? There was nobody to protect the victim. Right? I was there to protect, but my family had no interest in protecting a guy we did not know. Right. Prosecuting this guy was not going to interfere with the family dynamic of my huge extended family in Northern Rhode Island. So our stories, at the very beginning, you said you've talked to so many people, and my story is different. Every story is different. Every one of us, hundreds of us, thousands of us, the stories are different. My case is different because it was a true stranger danger abduction. But you and I both have taken the trauma that we experienced and turned it into some way to make it different, like the statute of limitations, giving victims the legal recourse in civil court to go after perpetrators.
And I just want to say, like, I yelled out, "Oh hell yeah!" when I read the book in the part where the guy was found battered and dead on the street, and I have every single victim that's ever reached out to me, male, female, has wanted to do what I did and kill their abuser. And just because I applaud what happened to your guy, if you were sitting here in front of me saying, I'm going to go look up the guy who did this to me, 40 years later, here we are sitting here doing this interview and I'm going to kill him, I'd be like, no,
don't do it.
No, man. Like, because what you do is you flush the remaining part of your life away. Murder is not a walk in the park.
Yeah.
It's brutal. It's ugly. It damages your soul, damages your psyche. And yes, you remove a filthy animal from the face of the earth so they can't hurt another kid. But you're not healing yourself.
Right.
Heal yourself. If you can still prosecute in any way, whether civilly or criminally, take that avenue. If you can shame them online, shame them online.
Yeah.
But to just forfeit the rest of your life for revenge is if that's what you want to do, have at it. So I went to prison. I know how prison is. If you want to spend 30 to life in prison, you are getting tortured every single day in there.
Yeah.
It's torture. Don't do it.
So a couple of things. My guy was up on criminal charges, right? Because there was enough evidence and the time hadn't lapsed, right? Okay, so he's up on criminal charges. I said earlier, not that I would encourage murder, but I'm glad that he's dead.
Right.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
I'm glad that he's dead because he was no longer around to do what he did to me to somebody else, which might have led to the death of that child. Okay. The other thing I want to stress is you mentioned that we skipped a part of the book. I'm not going to go into it, but it's all in the book.
Yeah, and I'd urge people to go read the book to get more of the story. It's fascinating.
And if you read it in Aruba or any other country, let me know because I want to talk about international distribution. Anyways, but it wasn't a revenge murder. It really wasn't. People are going, what do you mean? He did this to you and he died. No, there were conversations held between groups of men in my town that as long as this guy stayed out of my town, he was told not to be in Lincoln, Rhode Island ever again. Just don't. Because the objective was to keep Lincoln safe. And there were agreements, I know this to be true. There were agreements between guys that were protecting me and guys that this guy was earning for, because he was a criminal, that they were going to let this work its way through the courts. He got arrested 3 times before. He was released from jail, not prison, right, in November of 73 and grabbed me in March of 74. So he was not only a recidivist, but he kept getting more and more violent. It's facts. So nobody wanted, the intent wasn't he did it to Keith, kill him. The intent was he did it to Keith, let it work its way through the court system, because he's going away for a long time. Because now it's not just unnatural sex acts. It's abduction, beating, and rape. He was gone. It's like a 4th offender. Well, 4th-time charge. So the men in my town, there was a lapse of time where he was allowed to stay out, there was a lapse of time between what he did to me and what somebody else did to him.
Right.
And that lapse stopped because he violated one of the rules that these 2 groups agreed to.
Of coming back into your town.
I was riding my bike down Smithfield Avenue in the summer. It was in June or July. I was riding my bike and he drove right past me. That's it. I went to somebody terrified, shaking, scared. I went to somebody immediately and said, he just drove past me on the street. And shortly thereafter, he was dead. So I'm not encouraging murder. I'm not encouraging vengeance. There was a process put in place that the courts were going to take care of him as long as he followed the rules. He didn't follow the rules. In 1974, 51 years ago, life rules were different, especially in places like Philly or Trenton or Providence or Boston.
I've always said 150 years ago, if what happened to me or to you, the town folk would have grabbed their pitchfork and their torch and gone marching to the person's house and hang them. You know, that's just how it was back then. So.
And again, I want to stress, we went through the legal process, right? He was arrested. I identified him in a lineup. He had an attorney. I went to the grand jury. I testified. The grand jury handed down a bill, saying that they believed me. So we went through the legal process. That's not a revenge murder.
Right.
He broke the rules, and like I said, that there's a.
I always like to give my guests, the last word. To sum things up, maybe provide some golden nuggets of advice for the audience, whether it's life lessons throughout this, or healing, or what keeps you healthy and sane. So, how would you want to close out for the audience?
Like I mentioned, the more than 100 people I've spoken to over the last 15 years. So many of them are ruined. They're damaged. Drug abuse, alcohol abuse, physical abuse, domestic violence, eating disorders, bulimia, right? Anorexia, obesity. They can't trust other people. They become hermits. They let their own health go because they won't visit a dentist. People can't keep jobs. People are suffering from mental illness, sleeping disorders. And it's because as a society, what that victim child or adult went through is not acceptable to talk about. I'm blessed to know a number of people, you included, that seem to turn out okay, right? Despite what we've gone through. So here's because I know of the societal impacts of abuse. Here's my kernels of wisdom that you asked for. I understand why people do what they do, the self-destructive behaviors, illegal behaviors. I got to the point in my own adult life where I needed to reach out for help, and I did. Oh, my story, because of this guy's murder, was kept under wraps for 35 years. No one talked about it. And I got to the point where I knew that my silence, only except a handful of people who knew, my silence was slowly killing me. I reached out for help. I got it, and I'm okay. Here's my words of advice. If you forget everything I've said today, everything Clark said today, here's what I want you to remember. If you can disclose what happened to you, do so. People will help. I speak publicly for RAINN, RAINN. It's the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network. They're in Washington, D.C. And they've got a 24/7 helpline answered by people. It's not leave a message. If you can reach out, if you reach out for help, help is available. Not everybody can reach out for help. I was silent for 35, 40 years before I went public. I'd be a hypocrite if I told you to reach out. If you can, do it. If you can't, it's okay. I understand why you can't reach out for help. But here it is. If you can't reach out for help, you have to get to the place in your own mind where you realize what happened to you is not your fault. And the guilt and the shame and the fear that you live with is not yours to carry. That belongs to the perp. It belongs to the person who committed a sex crime against you. Get to the place. Disclose if you can. If you can't, get to the place where you truly believe what happened to you is not your fault. And at that point, Clark and everybody else, that's when you can make the transition from being a sex crime victim to being a survivor.
Amen, brother.
Thank you, Clark.
Hell of a ride, man. Wow. I urge everybody to pick up your book, Men in My Town, Keith Smith. Glad you made it through alive, man.
You and I both.
Yeah, and so we can help people along the way.
Yeah, and that's why we do it.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Wow, everybody. I don't know what to say after that. It was an amazing story. Keith went through absolute hell and survived and testified. Man, it takes a lot of strength for a child to testify. Bravo to him for that. And you could say the outcome the abuser brought on to himself. As Keith said, they were going to do the legal process, let the courts handle it. As long as a guy abided by certain rules, he broke those rules, and he sealed his fate. See you next week. Peace.